Welcome back. Mexico's president now threatening to give Trump a taste of his own medicine. This after he threatened a 25% tariff if shared borders with the United States are not secured once he assumes office. Trump also threatening to levy an additional 10% penalty on Chinese goods until officials in that country crack down on fentanyl production. Let's bring in Steve Forbes. We have him with us this afternoon. Steve, you're the perfect person to talk about this with. Take a look for some context here. U.S.'s top trading partners. Mexico comes in at number one with $475 billion of trade back and forth, China at number two, and then you can see there Canada at number three, just to set the stage. Do you think all of this sort of back and forthing between the president-elect and other foreign leaders right now is ultimately going to turn out to be helpful to U.S. goals or harmful?
I think it can be helpful to countries' goals of both countries. You may remember in the first term there was a lot of talk about a big trade war. Some tariffs were imposed. But at the end of the day, we renegotiated the old NAFTA treaty to the U.S., Mexico, North Canada treaty. And I think what President Trump is trying to do is saying if we get together and solve this problem, that those tariffs need not happen. This is not just about the tariffs per se, but also about Mexico getting control of the border. Before Joe Biden came in, Mexico worked very closely with the U.S. to make sure these illegals, immigrants, did not come into the country. In fact, they worked hard to make sure they didn't even come into Mexico. So what we're trying to do is get back to what was happening in 2021 before the border was opened up, in effect. And in terms of the economic side, Mexico's economy needs all the help it can get. And so I think even though the president, Mexico is very nationalistic, especially vis-a-vis the U.S., I think they're going to be actually trying to get an agreement on trade, on make sure we don't get in a trade war, because both sides are going to get hurt. And this new Mexican president, the last thing she needs is a crisis, real economic crisis on her border.
Well, it's interesting to note the way that the two countries responded to the incoming president today. You had Canada, Justin Trudeau hopping on the phone with the incoming president and then putting out sort of messages that seem meant to reassure folks. We have a lot of shared interests. Nothing's going to go off the tracks here. But then Mexico's officials weighed in and said, well, if you do that to us, we're going to hit you right back by increasing tariffs on your goods coming into our country. So it's a bit of a compare and contrast scenario.
Well, I think we have to remember the president who preceded this one was also of the same far left, and was making noises about Mexico doing harm to the U.S. economically if we did it to them. So I think these are preliminaries before they sit down. In fact, I think they're going to be sitting down informally well before January 20th, because they know this sword is hanging over their heads, and they'll find a face-saving way to get an agreement so that, one, they get control of the border again, and two, Mexico lives up to the new trade agreement. They have been violating it in terms of in the energy side, in terms of our people there, our businesses there having access to a court system that actually works fairly. So I think there's a lot to discuss. And so, yes, these are preliminaries. And that's why the market hasn't tanked, because they know they're going to sit down. It's in their interests of both sides. They make a lot of noise, but they're going to negotiate an agreement, just as they did in the Trump's first term.
This is all just the warm-up. Sounds like. Ken Griffin, one of the top hedge fund managers in the country, disagrees. Take a listen to what he says.
Mm-hmm. Those same companies that enjoy that momentary sugar rush of having their competitors removed from the battlefield soon become complacent. I'm much more concerned that this is the beginning of a slippery slope towards economic both irrelevance and going back to the earliest point, a decline in productivity.
So maybe you can interpret that for us. I take it to mean that he feels these tariffs could be hurtful to U.S. companies and businesses and consumers in the longer term.
Well, if they remain permanent and we had these 25, 60, 100% tariffs, yes, they would be very harmful. We've seen that from history, especially during the 1930s. But the words he used, slippery slope, yes, we have to avoid that. I think both countries want to avoid that because one of the things President Trump wants to have is a vibrant economy again. He's got to get a major tax bill through next year, which is going to be a very difficult haul because everyone's going to want to put their own stuff in the thing. So that's going to be a hard thing to get done. They will get it done. They have to get it done. So the last thing he wants is an economy that's troubled because of a tariff war. So, and again, Mexico does not want to go the way of Venezuela. They have a large population. And so I think both sides, after each get their chest pumped up and everything, will sit down and get an agreement, and will avoid that slippery slope that he warns about.
One thing that President Trump did in his first term, he's gearing up to do in his second term, is to couple trade with the border issue, both for Canada and Mexico and even China to some extent. He's coupling the threats of tariffs against Chinese officials if they don't tamp down on illegal fentanyl coming across the southern border. Do you think that is the right approach at this moment in time? It's certainly not something the Biden administration has done.
No, and the Biden administration created this a disaster. 10 to 11 million people illegally in this country, violent gangs in this country, which is absolutely astonishing that we allowed that to happen. And so the first term, President Trump, you remember, had to use some very hard language, had to really hit hard on Mexico, but they finally, with a government that was not friendly to the United States, but they finally reached an agreement where by the time President Trump left office, the illegal crossings on our border were de minimis, and a wall was actually being constructed. So I think it goes back. Hopefully we can get back to what we had in 2021. It worked in the first term, and I think they'll try to make it happen in the second term. We cannot allow the border to remain open.
All right, Steve, thank you for taking time with us this afternoon.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.